Hi friends, welcome to CodeNet. In this session, we want to understand on how we can work with strings as a special type of a simple data type when it comes to C++. So to work with the strings, of course, in definition, we can just define a string as simply a simple data type that holds on to a collection of characters when it comes to the content that has to go inside the variables that we'll be declaring and initializing inside our C++ code. So to work with the strings, what we first need to do is we need to include a certain library that will of course entail now define the entire content of the code. That okay, even on the point where you see a string as a data type, please work with it well because we've included the library. To include the library that works with strings, we just use the keywords include string as the library. The keyword string is simply the name of the file, which is of course the library or the header file that we include in each and every C++ code that we'll be using, or any project that will allow us to work with each and any of the data types that are related to strings and anything that is in associate to the strings. So of course this is now a clear view that yes, we'll be working with the strings inside our project. So to initialize and declare the variable name and anything related to any variable of a string, we just follow the same syntax like the syntax we specified from the session where we were talking about the data type. The data type name for strings is simply the keyword string. And since we are of course working with a string, then we can even specify now, since we've outlined that this is the data type we are making, we can even specify now the actual name for the variable. Let's say okay, name as the name of the variable, and then we say of course an assignment operator, that's what the equal sign is. We can then say okay, I'm making a variable which is based on a string as a data type. Now this variable should be equal to the actual content, and the actual content that needs to go into this variable should come in between the double quotes. I'm sure you can tell that we have the double quotes where the cursor is now blinking in between, and then the content that you put in between is simply the thing that goes inside the name of or the variable that you've specified. Don't forget, a variable is simply just like a container, hence the content that should be inside the container code name should be in between the double quotes. Please don't forget. Now the name that we want to send to that variable, let's just send the name Joshua. Let's just send the name Joshua. If we send that name into that variable, then definitely we also put a semicolon to terminate. If we are now to see out the content, we will just say okay, see out name as a variable, and then of course we even end the line. If we see out that, we compile and run F11 for a shortcut, Ctrl S to save before you compile and run. Then we are of course seeing Joshua, because that's the thing that is inside the variable name or the container that we called name when specifying the actual variable name for a string as a type of data type. So that's how we declare and initialize a string as a data type when it comes to C++. Now, since we said it is a special type of a data type, of a simple data type when it comes to C++, then definitely there should be some operations that can be performed on strings that can't be performed on other data types. What are some of the operations? Well, think of it in this way. Imagine if we wanted to know the total number of characters, because a string holds on to a collection number of characters, of course. Then what if we want to see or to know the total number of characters that makes up Joshua? Of course, if we were to count, it would take time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, which is time. But we can implement a function which is called a length function, which works with strings for we to know the total number of characters that are inside the name as a variable. So to implement such type of a function, we just say okay, see out, because we want to print this to the console, and then we say okay, total number of characters, since we want okay, total number of characters. Of course, we even do that, and then we implement search, and then here this is where we bring now down the function that will allow us to know the total number of characters that are in name as a variable. The total number of characters. To implement such a function, we just specify the actual name for the data type, which is name as a variable name for the data type string which you are working with, and then this is equal to length, and then such we even add a semicolon. So since we've done this, then definitely we expect to return 6 as the total number of characters that makes up Joshua, because Joshua is simply the content that is in name as a variable name. Let's compile and run F11 for shortcut. So we are saying, okay, Joshua, that's the thing inside name. Total number of characters 6, meaning that is one of the very important functions that you need to take note of. And to implement that, simply the function is length, and of course you also open and close search and then a semicolon. Of course, don't forget to precede the function with the variable name, and of course a full stop to just of course do that, and then return the actual results. So this is what we can do with strings. Now there is a special type of a function again that we can implement when it comes to the strings. This function is called a getLine function. Now, for you to see why it is important and why such a function is highly needed and why you need to know this function, let's implement something that will give us an error, and then we'll see how the getLine function actually overcomes that error. Imagine you are making maybe an application. Is it an Android application or a Windows based or any type of system, and then you want the end user, before they actually continue with full interaction with your application, they should first submit their full names. So meaning we are making a program now. Let's even delete these, because we want this function to stand in alone for that cleanness and of course the neatness. Imagine you want to get the full name from the end user. Now of course you can implement a cin, and anything to get the content from the end user, but what are some of the limitations that we'll get if we only stick to cin? That will allow us to know what the getLine function actually does and how we can actually work with it as a special type of function when it comes to string. So we are creating a system. We first need to declare of course the variable. We need to know the variable of course, which is string, and then let's just say the variable name is full name, and then we put a semicolon. From there we can of course prompt the end user, like we know how to work with the cout and anything related to that. Hi, enter your full name. Your full name. Definitely we expect the user to enter the full names. If there are 4 names, Joshua, Kelvin, or anything related to that, Brian, Charles, we expect the full names to be entered. To get the full name from the other types of simple data types, you are using cin. So cin, definitely we even implement the actual variable name that is needed for we to get the full name from the end user. And then we can even see out the full name entered by the end user, and then we can say your full name is, let's go outside and then print the content of full name as a data type, or as of course a simple and anything related to that. So we are saying hi, enter your full name. The user will enter the full name. Your full name is, will print out the full name. Let's see the limitations of using cin when it comes to the strings as a special type of a data type, and then from there we'll implement now the getLine function for we to understand what it does and how we can work with it. Ctrl S to save and then compile and run. Definitely we should see this program popping up. Hi, enter your full name. Kevin Brown. That's the name. So of course we expect the entire name Kevin Brown to be printed out, but boom, look at the errors we have now. instead of seeing a full name Kelvin Brown, we are just seeing Kelvin. Why are we not seeing Brown? Well, it is because a string will of course always when it comes to C++ treat each and every space or a tab which you input or which you add into your code as simply a terminating character. So at the point where the user was now entering Kelvin, at the point he or she as the user just clicked on space, the string treated that as simply terminating the entire process. Okay, I'm done, I've entered Kevin, that's my full name. Brown, don't consider that. So that is simply a limitation that we have when it comes to the strings. So like for example, if we were to run and then we print out, we write the end user enters the entire name without the spacing and anything related to that, the string will of course print out the entire name now, Kevin Brown. But of course you can tell that this is not accurate because we don't have a space between Kevin and Brown. So there should be a way in which we can get the entire name as entered by the end user, whether with a tab or a space in between. How can we overcome such a challenge where a string treats the space and the tab as simply a terminating character? Well, we bring in now the getLine as a function which comes from the strings. So instead of using cin, we eliminate this part and then add on a function called getLine as a function, and then we open and close and then bring in the cin and the first parameter, and of course now the variable name, which is full name, as the last parameter, which is of course the second parameter. GetLine is simply a function. You open and then you close. Then cin comes in as the first parameter. You put of course a comma, and then the full name as the variable name. The variable that will hold on to the content that will be entered via the use of cin should be of course the second thing, and then from there you terminate the process. Enter of course your full name is here. When executing this code, we expect now to see the full name, whether the user entered a space in between or whether the user entered a tab in between. So okay, Kevin Brown. Definitely we've now seen, okay, your full name is Kevin Brown. So what have we discussed so far? What is the implementation? What are we talking about? Well, when we come to the code, instead of using cin in our code where we are saying, okay, let's add this as a comment, we are saying, okay, cin full name. Whenever you want to get the entire things entered by the end user, the entire line of sentence entered by the end user, please don't use cin. Cin is appropriate if you just want to get one word from the end user. If you want to get an entire line, the entire sentence, then use the getLine as a function. Just make sure that immediately you implement a getLine, open and close, of course you've cleaned its open and of course closed and the semicolon, and then add on the actual variable as a second parameter. Parameters we'll discuss and see how they work in our next sessions, and of course the cin and the first parameter, and put a semicolon and put a comma before the actual second parameter, which is the full name as the actual name for the variable that will hold on to such content. So this is the very basics we could have when it comes to the strings, and as a special type of a simple data type. Please don't forget to subscribe, and then please rewatch the video if you don't understand the content, because understanding this well will prepare you. You even understand more complicated codes when it comes to the strings and how they work. Else, please don't forget to subscribe, and you are on CodeNet.